Y'all, welcome back to the Refined Life Podcast, where we get refined AF. And today we have a very special guest. Jared Blake's out of studio once again, but we do have Jeff Suter here.
Hey,
He ain't a guest. He's on the show. Excuse me. But there's a guy that's always behind the scenes, always making the magic happen. And you've heard us say, "Abe Lincoln, Abe Lincoln. Hey, it's Blinken.
It's a Blinken.
It's a Blinken." And this next guy that's going to be coming up, he is the reason we always have to yell that. He helps us put this thing together. He's got a multitude of businesses and talents that he's out there doing and serving people and helping artists, young artists, old artists, great artists, probably some bad artists for that matter, get more results and better results at what they do. And so with that being said, he's also a phenomenal dad. He's a great hula hooper and fire swallower. He's amazing. He doesn't like sports, so I just wanted to get that out there. But the one and only Mr. Jim Gray.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Great to be here on the Refined AF podcast. I don't know, do we ever actually say out loud what AF is?
Alien farts.
Alien farts. Refined Alien Farts podcast. And yeah, it's awesome to be here. And I've sat in all the chairs in this room, mostly in the corner, and just made sure that things went well.
Keep Big Vinny in check.
Yeah, that's like a whole thing, and
He ain't succeeded yet.
Not yet.
Well, podcasting is this really fun. There's this really fun community aspect that happens because, you think it's just recording a podcast, but there's a community aspect that's happening. Because you've got to book it and you've got to make sure it gets produced right, and you got to make sure that everything, all the lights and everything else, and that the TV screens are all lit up. There's a lot of different parts and pieces. Yeah,
because sometimes in the middle of your thing, it could just go mute.
Yeah, you can just stop working.
And then Big Vinny will light you up.
It's been known to happen.
Yeah. I didn't even know I was lighting him up. I just thought it was funny that the mute came on the screen. Anyways, that being said, which is cool. I mean, I love that you are part of this with us, and you do such a great job. And we know that you're, we'll send you a message 2 days before we want to record, and you're like, all right, this is the time we can get in, and we make stuff happen, and it's the nature of kind of the way we have to do stuff, because we all have different jobs, we all have different lives, we all have different stuff going on. So in order to get the three of us here, or at least just two of us here, sometimes it takes some work and some kind of moving around or jumping around with the schedule, and you always make sure that happens for us. But with that being said, I also want people to know about your other businesses, what you do, your extensive work in the music industry. There's so many things about you that's more than just, hey, I'm the guy behind the scenes pushing a button or making sure that, your microphone's turned on. And, I find you very interesting. I think that we've talked about that before, because you got a cool mustache and a beard. And but you've had your
Look at them
and
glasses.
cool glasses, bro. Hardy ain't got nothing on you.
Look at these glasses.
Yeah.
There they are. Right. By the way, these are, I had to order these. I broke these last summer. Yeah, it was last summer. I was working at my church, like working a production shift at my church, and they fell off my face and broke. And I was so stunned because I didn't have a backup pair. And I literally drove around for a couple of days with there was just like one arm on it. Like this arm was broken off. And so I drove around with just like one arm of glasses for like a week.
My dude ain't never heard of electrical tape.
Yeah.
His whole life, no electrical tape.
Do you have a backup pair now?
I do. I have a backup to my backup, and I'm about ready to get the same pair prescription sunglasses.
But you can subscribe to this podcast now.
You can.
Please do.
Yeah. But so you kind of going into this, you said, man, I love to talk about my faith. I love to talk about being a dad, and all that kind of stuff. So I definitely want to get to those things too, and know more about that side of you, because I think we're in and out real quick, and normally you're like, hey, what's the episode and this and that. But I want to make sure people know who Jim Gray is, the man, on top of just the businesses and things that you start. But let's start with your music industry things, that everything from playlisting to management, the things you've done, the artists you've worked with, and some of that kind of stuff. And I know you work with, even Americana, different type of artists that maybe some people don't know about, that are some of the most talented people out there. So I would love to just kind of hear what got you started in music, and what was your passion for that?
That's a great question, Vinny. And thanks for having me on the show, guys. This is a huge honor. The biggest inspiration for what I do in music was actually my kids. I've got three adult children who are all very creative and talented, and the oldest son is the lead singer of a alternative rock band based out of Denver. And then my daughter is works for a company, is also an actress. And then my youngest son works for a company and is a songwriter as well. So the two sons have written quite a bit of music, and one of them is distributed through my label. So that's been a huge honor. I'd say some of the best training I have working with artists was like learning how to like nurture my kids and just drive them and invest in them, you know. And so the first thing we did, the primary thing we did in our parenting was I was always like the kid that I wanted to do everything, and sometimes I didn't do those things well. I wanted to play, you know, back in the day, it's like when I was a kid, I wanted to play sports and I wanted to do well in school and I wanted to act and I wanted to do all of these and go to youth group and do all these things. But that doing all those things didn't help me be a better person or a better Christian or better, you know, anything really. It actually taught me to be spread too thin. And so when we were parenting and raising up our kids, we decided to give them three options. Almost every school, you know, whether it's the fall or the winter, you know, we would say you can do three things. You could definitely got to do school, and you could do, you know, music, you know, drama or church or sports or whatever it is, but you can only pick three things. And then as adults, that taught them, you know, better decision-making skills or good decision-making, this, you know, foundation. And so I still use a lot of those types of thought process in whether it's business or in personal. And but just helping, you know, helping them think through things helped me when it came time to like help other people make decisions or even myself. I kind of had like some foundation for that. And but I got started in the music business. I had a friend of mine that was working for a company in Colorado Springs. And at the time, we were living in the Pacific Northwest. And I was talking to him on the phone one day, and he goes, you know, we just bought a Christian record label called Integrity Music, and they moved all these families to Colorado Springs. And he goes, and the guy who's running that division, the marketing division, came by my office the other day and said that he was like, hey, I'm looking for somebody who does X. And he goes, I know a guy who lives in the Pacific Northwest would be perfect for that. And he referred me to that guy, and they flew me out a few weeks later to interview for that gig. And I became part of like the digital marketing team at a independent record label in Colorado. And they moved us out there. And I honestly didn't know anything about, you know, Christian music. Well, first of all, I didn't know anything. I didn't know much about marketing music, and I didn't know anything about like independent worship Christian music, because that's like a very niched,
yeah, it is,
you know, group, right? And but it's all the people that are writing songs that you sing at churches, right? And so I just had to like do a quick study on who all those people were, and so that was kind of like the start of it all. And then I left the label after a few years, and I thought maybe I was done with music. Because I'm not a musician, I'm not a singer or anything, but I kind of have, you know, creatively and intuitively, I kind of know what something should sound like after listening to a lot of music and reviewing it. And then in about 5 years ago, I went through some big life changes, and I went through a divorce, right? And so I had a big life change. My kids were all adults. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life, and I had some things going on. I had some relationships in Nashville around the music business, and I was like, well, if I'm going to do this, it's now.
Yeah.
So that was summer of 2019, and then the pandemic happened in like March of 2020 or whatever it was. It was like roar, it was like slow down, like speed up, get really excited, move to town, and then
bam, hit the brakes.
Slowed down, you know, and so that was a pretty wild thing. And then I honestly didn't know how it was all going to work out, because I thought maybe I was going to be a manager.
Yep.
And because a lot of, you know, people give you feedback, you're like, oh man, you'd be a great manager. And I was like, oh great. Now I wish I would have said, well, how does that work? You know, because if, you know, it's like, well, you got to get a percentage of something. And it's like, well, if somebody's playing down on Broadway And you're like, well, if I'm going to be your manager, I need to get 10%. And that person's not making any money. They're like, well, I can't pay my bills if I give you 10%. But I had all kinds of people, promise me things. And I was like, how am I going to make any money doing this? I need some more time to think about this. And so I took a job at a marketing agency for a while to kind of like help me figure out what I was going to do and how it was all going to work. And then I started going to a lot of shows and meeting people and Nashville's the biggest small town I've ever lived in. Mm-hmm. And then I started going to shows, meeting people. I had a couple of artists, did some things. And, I also experimented with just doing A&R and, doing A&R and helping people find the right producers. I found that was a big problem. There's like all these artists in town and all these producers and not nobody, but like, I wasn't sure on the independent side how that was happening. Like how are new artists that are moving to town finding producers other than, getting introduced to them. And, so I had some good success, like playing the association game and matching people up.
Yeah, no, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, we talked about before about me being a connector, and I've had that same kind of thing. People are like, man, you need to, to manage. And, I got asked by a very, very large record label in town that absolutely kills it. And the head of that label called me in for me. He's like, why weren't you managing this artist when you brought him into me? And why weren't you doing this and that? And I was like, well, they weren't making any money. I see it. I see that.
The timer.
Oh, only at 9 minutes.
He's
That's
the
what got
guest,
you.
and he's still keeping us
I know.
in
He's
check.
trying to keep me in check. Hey, that's your job, Mr. Cool Hair. Anyway, no, he had said to me, he had said, you need to be managing these artists and doing all that. And I'm like, well, that's cool, but how am I going to pay my bills while I'm managing these artists? Because none of them ain't making no money yet, and they're still 2 to 3 years away from making money. So if I take them on, even if I take them on and I get them a record deal today, you're still probably not going to release anything on them for at least 6 to 8 months. And then it's going to be another 6 to 8 months before they really start getting real shows where they're making enough money to actually pay me 15%, which a lot of managers now are taking 20%, and it's a gross. So if I look at an artist, I'm like, hey, I got you a $10,000 show. By the way, by the time you pay me, pay the record label, pay your booking agent, pay your business manager, or whatever all you got, you're only going to have about 50% of that left to go out there and play. So now you got $5,000 to take out 5 guys or 4 people, whatever, 4 guys and yourself, and go on the road, get hotels, pay for your travel, pay for your gas, pay for your food, all that other stuff, and then come back and hopefully you'll make some money. And that's a hard place to put people in. Being the artist myself and knowing what that's like, to think, man, well, we got paid $20,000 tonight. $20,000 becomes $10,000 real quick, and that's before you've had to pay out any of the expenses. So it's a tough world to be in, because it's like me with a conscience. I'm like, I'm not going to make these people that are actually out there leaving the house and doing the work and having the talent go out there and feel like they're bootstrapped the entire time, and then when they get back from all this stuff, they have nothing left.
That's right. And also, much like that, what you just said is like, I had that realization of like, man, I'm never going to make any money because none of these people have any money. There's people making money, but I haven't met them yet. So I got to figure out ways I had to figure out ways to provide value. And a lot of people they knew I had marketing experience. That was the best thing I had going for me, is I knew how to market things on some levels, but I didn't really I knew I had some missing pieces that were like services that I would need to develop. And so the first thing I developed was coaching. It was just like and some of these people, like, they could barely afford like $100 a month.
Yeah.
Which, if you just moved to town and you're working a job, busting tables or waiting tables or whatever, $100 can be a lot of money. But, on my side, it's like, I just had to build up all of these different like offers. So I built up coaching, and then, somewhere during the pandemic, I'd started hearing about a guy who was doing playlisting. He'd built all these relationships with playlisters, and he had built this like really robust company. And not only did he have Spotify, but he had YouTube marketing services as well. And I just couldn't figure out who he was. And then I figured out he wasn't in Nashville. That was the real trick. And he was based somewhere else. And so I got an introduction to him finally and got a meeting with him. And then over time, I basically made an agreement with him that I could work with him. And I basically white labeled his company is what I did.
Oh, yeah.
And so I started just like a marketing agency would. I just started reselling his services to my clients. And I remember sitting in a duplex I was living in East Nashville, like 2 blocks beyond Rose Pepper, a great neighborhood to do the pandemic in, by the way, because there were lots of people around, lots of great places to eat, or at least be able to walk to get food, or coffee shops that were open. And it was just a great little neighborhood right there in Eastwood.
Yeah.
And, but I remember sitting in my little duplex and my little writing desk or whatever, and on my computer, and I was like, all right, I'm going to make up all of these offers for things. And then I started just, going out and reaching out to people that I knew. And some people were like, yeah, I got a new, and I was like, hey, I heard you got a new song coming out, and I'd love a shot at marketing that song, and I'll give you a deal on it. And they were like, cool. And so I marketed a couple of songs. I did like 20 songs that year. It was just like as an experiment, and still kept the coaching and some other services going. And then the next year I marketed about 200 songs.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
And so, I think now I've marketed like close to, I don't know, 600 to 800 songs or something like that. And what that's led to is like a real crash course in not only music marketing, but music. You kind of learn because, every time we work a song into our portfolio, we've got to like get that song link, listen, everybody on the team has to listen to it. And then we've got to give a quote back to the artist. And when you've done that with that many songs, like you learn a lot because you basically everything that a producer knows and a whole bunch of other people know. And, it's basically it's business intelligence.
Right.
And so it's a lot of it's just doing discovery, and you can make faster decisions doing that. But, in some of the relationships I've built, I could have never, had I not taken the risk to, go build that relationship with that company and that other leader, and then go out and then take the risk to go out and say, well, I made the pricing. Now I got to go out and have the guts to actually go and sell it. Cause I was just like, man, I know this person's got music. Can I work with them? And do they have the budget?
Yeah.
And then I started getting introduced. Then another level of something that happened was those I found out some of those producers, we all had similar clients, and they liked the way that I did things, and I liked the way that they worked, and so they started referring their clients to me.
Yeah.
And that was the bigger win. And then I've got so my one artist that I manage is named Grady Nichols. He's a smooth jazz and pop saxophone player based out of Tulsa. And he came through a mix engineer that knew about me. And I started marketing his new record. And then that next year, I think that was like 2 years ago, we started talking about management, about what that would look like. And so now we've got, he just came to town, and we cut like a 10-song project at Starstruck on Music Row.
Yeah, love Starstruck.
Yep. And we've got a new music video that came out. Actually, what's sort of strange about the last single we released, it's called Night Music, and it's dedicated to David Sanborn. And Sanborn just passed away like last week. We didn't even know he was sick. And so it'd been like a couple of weeks since the song came out, and we'd had a music video that we'd already finished. And the producer on that song is St. Paul Peterson. He was part of The Family, which is part of Paisley Park and Prince's whole regime.
Oh, wow.
And he's in the Purple Rain movie as a keyboard player.
That's
which
awesome.
And so his brother Ricky is a really well-known keyboard player. And my client Grady met Ricky. He met Ricky when Ricky was producing one of Sanborn's record in L.A. Grady was out there, shopping for a new producer. And anyway, so that's a really small world. But that's how I got into marketing jazz music and managing a jazz artist. And I didn't even know anything about jazz.
What is the biggest market for a jazz artist? Is it sync licenses? Is it?
I would say it's sync and radio and honestly like live gigs.
Yeah.
Like marketing music helps us get more gigs.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And because we're not playing in Grady's not. Well, that's the other thing is that I realized. I remember back in my early stages, right before I moved to Nashville, I had a conversation with I won't say who they are, but it was a rather large global nonprofit based in Colorado Springs, and I was meeting with one of their guys, and I had an artist I just started working with, and they were like, man, we would love to work with him, and we'd probably put together a deal where they could go out with another artist and tour with them, and you know, he'll be like the opening act, but he'll have to pitch, you know, our thing. And I was all excited, man. I got in my truck and got on the phone and called this guy, and I was like, hey man, I got a deal for you. You know, I'm like, I just talked to so-and-so and the rep and da-da-da. And he goes, oh yeah, I love that guy. And I told him what the deal was. And the man, you go on a tour and, you know, be on the bus, all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, because I don't really know if I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I'm like, you realize I went to like a guy that I know really well and pitched him on us.
And he said yes.
And he said yes. And you're telling me you don't think you want to do it? And I was blown away. It was the first time that I realized that it didn't matter. It didn't matter what kind of deal you have. It's like everybody has to agree to it.
Yeah.
It's like, and not to confuse enthusiasm with priority.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so I'm not sure exactly how I ended up on that, but it's just like, you know, talking about different markets for things. Different people have different priorities. Now with Grady, I know where I was going. Grady doesn't play like he won't play like in a dive bar. He won't play in a there's a whole list of types of plays he won't play, but we'll play in a country club, we'll play a, you know, benefit, we'll play in some clubs if it's really the right, but we want it to be classy, you know. And then there's like, you know, the different offers of like of him coming out solo.
So you don't want to play the Holler and Swaller Saloon in Quincy, Illinois?
Man, it ain't gonna happen.
That sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
I played there a lot. I loved it.
Yeah. But it's just my point was is that sometimes you have like people that they have strong preferences about where they want to gig.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, artists, you know how it is. I mean, there's ones that are so artistic that they have no business side, and then there's others that are kind of a mix of both, and there's some that are they only see it as a business, you know, and they don't use the artistic, you know, they don't have like the artistic side of their brain, but they have a talent for singing or whatever. And I've seen it throughout my years. I've seen some of the most talented artists in this town that people have never heard of because I just want to make music, man, you know. And I love those guys because I sit there and listen to them like, dadgum, they're so talented. Their songs are so amazing. You know, I think it takes a business mind to come in with a Chris Stapleton. I think it took, you know, Justin Timberlake saying, wait a second, this guy is not getting seen the way he should be getting seen. You know, and then when the whole world saw him, they're like, wait a second, this guy's amazing. But I've been seeing that guy here for 14 years before that, that everybody was like, oh, yeah, he's a great singer. I'm like, no, that's the best singer that I've heard, you know, and his songwriting and all the stuff. You know?
Yeah. And one thing I realized was that, and you've probably seen this, is that I realize now that a lot of the people I'm helping are not in Nashville. They're not moving here. They're actually, their producers are on the West Coast or up north in the Northeast, or they're in Florida. And I also thought that everybody in Nashville or every producer or every artist knew about somebody like me that marketed and helped them like everything like after production. I thought that everybody had a plan, and boy, was I wrong.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I think it's hard too because there are companies that do it, but you never know what you're really getting into. And, you know, even with the management stuff here in town, I've watched people put together companies and they charge these artists anywhere from $2,500 to $5,000 a month to consult them because it's illegal to have people pay you for management in Tennessee, which most people don't know that. So that's why they're called consultants. They can consult you on your music. They can be your A&R. They can be these things, but a manager cannot charge you to be your manager in Tennessee. So any of you managers out there that are charging your clients $2,500 to manage them, change your verbiage to consulting fee. But anyways, it's,
you know.
Yeah, great. Hey, you gotta be in the know because you know what'll happen is you'll think you got an ironclad contract and they've been paying you money, and the next thing you know, they get a big old record deal, and the record deal says, "Wait a second." Let them know they're relieved of their position, and you will no longer get anything from anything you've done with them ever. So, anyways, just be smart when you're doing stuff. But that being said, they'll go sign 25 artists up to pay them $2,500 to $5,000 a month. They believe in one or two of the artists at most. And most likely on those artists, they're saying, you know what, don't worry about it. We got you. And the other ones are sitting there footing the bill for you to actually market and help these two artists. And I've been offered that. I've had people come up to me and say, I will pay you to be my manager. I will pay you to help me. And my problem is I have to actually believe in you. Like, I have to listen to your music or see you play. Because I think there's a lot of people that are way more talented songwriters and singers than they are performers. And then I think there's people that are phenomenal performers but ain't got no clue about the songs they're singing and all that kind of stuff. So if I'm going to help somebody, I have to believe in either their performing talent, their writing talent, their singing talent. There has to be something there that I'm like, you know what? With the right guidance and the right stuff, I could jump in there and do it. I'm sure you're the same way.
Oh yeah, it's well, and I'm not. I haven't had a lot of most of what I've done is on like marketing and A&R and development, sort of like everything, like, and sometimes helping them find the right producer, right, to get the right songs written and who are we co-writing with, and it's almost like the continuity thread of the song. Well, one thing that happened in the past couple of years was that I started looking at different distributors, like digital distributors, and what they were offering. So I looked at DistroKid and DistroKid for labels and a whole bunch. There's like so many of them now. And then last year I ended up working a deal with a company called Syntax Creative out of Franklin, and so now I have my own distribution deal.
That's great.
Which with that partnered. So the dream was that partnered because they pitched to editorial teams at all the majors, right, or all the major, Spotify and Apple and all that, and they kind of function as like, it's like having a record label team behind you because they're doing their own marketing, they've got their own relationships, and then I've got my relationships on my side and a marketing plan, and then I've got Spotify playlist promotion and YouTube promotion and all this. So I was like, okay, I have something here that can truly help an independent artist now.
Absolutely.
And so when people are asking me about pitching them to labels, I just tell them, I'm like, and I kind of joke about it because I'm not, confidence. I love that Nick Hyder says that confidence is the memory of success, right?
That's great.
I will tell them that.
Dang it, Nick, you ain't never come in here with us.
Right. He'll be in here at some point. But but with knowing that, I tell people sometimes, I'm like, they're like, well, if you could pitch me, and I'm like, listen, I'm like, to some people, I am the music industry because I built the infrastructure that you could do everything you need through me. I've even got, now I've got graphic designers, video producers. I got a full creative team. And not only that, but then I've got all the marketing assets and now, access to publicists and all that kind of stuff. I was like, well, why do I need those other machines anymore? Well, they've got all those relationships and all. So when, it's interesting to me when I've got relatives or friends that are talking about coming to town and they're coming to visit, they're like, oh man, we're going to go see so-and-so at Bridgestone or Nissan or whatever. And I was like, yeah, man, have fun. Like, that's awesome. I'm not a big commercial music guy.
Yeah.
I support independent artists and bands, and people are like, well, sometimes friends will ask me, well, who are you working with? I'm like, I'm really not that guy. I mean,
yeah, you're working with independent artists, and you're not. But there's some these. I mean, you look at what's his name, Billy Strings now.
Yeah,
that he started off like that. I think has he signed with anybody yet?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's done, but I mean, he's filling up arenas. Cooper Allen, guy in town, good buddy of mine. I mean, he crushed it on TikTok, and he's got a little bit of a team behind him, but it's not a record label. It's Victoria Shaw, who's a songwriter. She's kind of managing him and pushing him, but he blew up because he got consistent on TikTok, and the next thing you know, he's got 9 million followers on there. He's making $50,000 a month from streaming.
Yep.
And he owns that.
That's right.
And he's been offered the deal. And he's like, I mean, what are y'all really going to bring me? At this point.
Yeah.
If I'm already making this, $50,000 a month from streaming, and then I can go out there and get $25,000 to $40,000 a show, and I own it all, and I don't got to give this person 25% and the record label 5% of this, and whatever. It's like, why am I going to give up that extra 5 or 10, 20% of the money that I'm already making? Unless the only way you would is if they can show you a ironclad proof plan that they're going to double, triple your money. And they can't. I don't know that they can guarantee that because they're the most record labels. Now they're starting to change. Now they're becoming more marketing labels, like what you're saying, as opposed to record labels. But the only thing they can add to you is a bigger arena, and country music. Country music, it's radio.
Yeah.
You know, and for a lot of folks, I mean, radio continues to get smaller and smaller, and those spots are worth less and less, you know, but they keep charging more and more.
Well, I'm not even I wouldn't say I've not been a radio guy, but I'm more, I had somebody, you know, come to town recently, asked me for, like, signed up for like, paid for an hour consultation, and was like, you know, I want to get on radio. And I'm like, did you not do your research, or maybe send me fill out my questionnaire or something? 'Cause I'm like, I've never even in any of my social media or my website or anything talk about radio.
Well, the thing is there's a lot of companies out there that claim to be radio, and they can't do nothing for you. And you can go spend the $20,000 a month, or sometimes it's $20,000 per life of the single, and you'll get nothing out of it. Mm-hmm. You can go to the Music Row charts all day long, and listen, there's a lot of companies out there that started off that they had something that would help, but it doesn't help anymore. Like, getting on the Music Row charts doesn't change the gamut for you. It doesn't help you in any way that I can see. Every now and then you might luck up and get a county fair booking or something because you got that. You know, people just aren't listening like they used to. They don't listen to radio like they used to, and that's a shame, because I love radio. I was the kid that went out and sit in the van, my mom's minivan, and turned on Kicks 96 every single night just to listen to the country music.
You run the battery
songs.
down?
I started it up. I said, I loved music. Like, I would sit there. I probably did run the battery down a couple times, but not in the summertime in Tennessee. Boy, you got to turn that thing on. But I loved radio, and I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of more the localized stuff, because it's like, not that I have anything. I mean, Bobby Bones is great, and these syndications are great, but I don't care what your opinion is on, you know, what happened on Dancing with the Stars last night. Like, I would listen to radio and I'd know, okay, this is when the hometown football game is starting, and this is what's going on at Joe's Paint Shack, and this is what, like, that was the stuff you used to get, I think, from the hometown radio, the local feel that I grew up in. And I feel like now it's like I'm just listening to people talk about their opinions on current matters, which I don't mind. We do that on the podcast sometimes, but it's not the basis of our show. And I feel like that hometown feel, that ownership mentality is starting to go away. And so what I feel like will happen is, as radio continues to struggle, and it's really struggling now, I mean, thousands of people get laid off every year, is that it will go back to being more hometown owned and aimed around that hometown, you know, advertising their businesses, what they're doing. So go ahead, Jeff.
You remember what the big selling point for satellite radio was when it first came to market? Does anybody remember?
No commercials.
No commercials. And now every channel has a DJ. Now, you still don't have a commercial.
But they talk their
but
product,
you're getting their opinion
product
on shit
placement.
that's not the music.
Yeah, product
Constantly.
placement. Like, oh yeah, I got this new thing last night, this Swiffer wet jet. You know,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
hey, we know what product placement is. We ain't stupid. We know they paid you to say that. I do love my Swiffer wet jet, and they're not paying us yet, but hopefully they will. And I'll talk about Swiffer wet jet till the cows come home.
You never really get, like,
deep in the cracks.
But think about Swiffer wet jet, when you pull the thing out that you put on the flat part.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of gross, that chemical, or what this, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a good opportunity to bring up Ghost Energy and the electric limeade from EDC Las Vegas 2024.
Bam.
So, Ghost, get at us. This one was good. Do we look good? Do we look good up there, guys?
You
Is this
do.
good product placement.
Oh, I do too. Damn,
great.
look at that.
You look fantastic.
That brings me to my next one, Hydro Jug. Hydro Jug keeps me infiltrated, pippled-rated, and hydrated every day of my life. Anyways, back to the music. No, so I think that's awesome that you do offer these services and things like that. And I think we had talked a little bit about it before. We was talking about, you know, a couple of artists that I'm working with that are more in the realm of what you do.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. You know, I have hired companies before and like, hey, this is going to be the answer, and it's going to get you X amount of more followers on Spotify, and it just doesn't happen that way.
Well, there's a Spotify, any platform that's built around an algorithm. I'm making up words now,
Algorithms.
Jeff.
Aggravation. Pythagorean theorems.
Yeah, aggravation. You know, when you don't keep things, you don't keep people's attention, there's always going to be an attrition rate of like that's going to drop off. And so what we try to focus on is monthly listeners, to try to grow that and then grow those streaming numbers. But I'm convinced, and when people ask me, well, what should I do what should I do to market my music? I'm like, well, how much time and money do you have? Because honestly, it's a game. It's an attention game. You know, I'm trying to get your song not only placed on the right playlist, but I'm also trying to get your music video in front of all the eyeballs on YouTube. And then maybe we're doing a publicity campaign. Maybe you're playing a gig. And there are definitely people I think that break, you know, and people find out about them. But it takes it takes a while.
Yeah.
Like how many years have you been in this? How
long have you been playing? I got my record. I came here in 2000 I started coming to Nashville in 2005. Got my record deal in 2007, and was on tour with Toby for several years, and did great for a long time. But you know what a lot of people don't realize is there can be a rise and a fall and another rise and another fall, and it's like you climb one mountain and there's another mountain right there waiting for you to climb. And then just the change of the music business over the last 15 to 20 years that I've been in it, it's completely different now. You know, Trailer Choir, my band, was built for TikTok. We were built for that kind of stuff. We were doing that kind of stuff years and years and years ago. We literally did a whole thing of dancing called How to Be a Sexy Dance Machine with Big Vinny. And it was on YouTube. And, you know, had we had TikTok and put those little clips in there, that we didn't have that then. But when you go back and look at our footage, I thought it was like pristine footage. We had our own green screen, all this stuff. But when you go back and look at the footage now, I was like, dude, it looks so grainy. But we had one of those, remember those cameras that had like the USB that flipped out of it? Mm-hmm. And we thought, dude, this is the best thing. It was the best thing you had back then.
Yeah.
And now if you put that up, people will be like, what'd you record this on, a camcorder from 1972,
Or maybe that's what we need, though. Maybe that's what'll set the artist apart, is going back
grainy film. That's what I get it.
We're bringing grainy back.
Yeah, but no, it's been 15, 20 years of up and down and up and down. And there's been times, and the thing is we came out when MySpace was blowing up. It was the first kind of real social media platform. We got up to 100,000+ actual real friends, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
And that was in a time 100,000 was like having 1 million or 2 million now, because there's so many more people on social media. So we had built this massive fan base that we were doing well with. And then MySpace went away. And we weren't allowed on Facebook at that time because it was only if you were in college.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden we better allow people on Facebook. So then we get on Facebook, but we have no clue. We don't have that really built up right. And we're used to being able to put our music out there and do all this other stuff you could do on MySpace, but you couldn't do that on there. People couldn't take your song and put it on their page. Mm-hmm. Mark Cuban took Rockin' the Beer Gut and put it on his MySpace page. That was a huge part of, I don't even know if he knows that he probably didn't even know the band. He probably just heard the song, thought it was funny and put it on there. But when he put Rockin' the Beer Gut on his page, people started following us. People started, friend requesting us. And I'm sitting there, I was like, why are we getting 30, 40 friend requests at a time today? Every time I get on it, 30, 40 friend requests, boom, 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 accept them all. But people wanted to follow us because Mark Cuban put us on there.
Yeah.
So it's like, that went away though. The second that social media was no longer the thing, it was gone. And then, we finally start to master, Facebook. And it's like, okay, we're up to 25,000 followers, and then Twitter. And it's like, okay, now we got 28,000 followers on Twitter. And then I was Instagram. And then there was a thing called Periscope for a while, which I loved. I thought was great. I got on there and I would have 10,000 people watching me on there sing and play a song, and I'd get all the hearts and I'd feel good about myself.
About Periscope. There was another one that was a competitor of Periscope. What was that? It was
Vine. No, not Vine. Vine was more
Vine. It was like Periscope, and there was like another one you could go live on.
Oh, was it?
It wasn't Twitch, but it was.
No.
It was something in that.
Stage It.
Yeah, Stage It or something like that. But there were all those live platforms.
Yeah, but and you know who really killed that was Jake Owen. Jake Owen had Stage It, and he would do Friday night concerts on Stage It whenever he wasn't in touring season, and people would come in there, and he'd have 20,000 people pay $15 to $20 a piece to come watch him sit in his living room and play and sing, and then you could tip. He was making bank doing that. Of course, now the algorithms won't let you do that.
Yeah.
The last time I went live when I first started going live on MySpace, or on Facebook when it was first allowed, I'd have 300-400 people watching me, dude. And of course, I wasn't asking for tips. I was just on there playing because I thought, well, this is cool. Like look at all the comments, and then the algorithms changed, and then I starting off with about 80 people, and then it would die down to about 15 and stay there. And then Instagram came out. Instagram started being thing. Go live on Instagram. I go live on Instagram. Same thing. 200 people watching me. And that very swiftly went down to 3 or 4. TikTok. My very first TikTok I ever did, I had 380 people in my live because they honor you because you went live for the very first time. Ever since then, 2-3 people at most. but they want you to stay on there and keep doing it because you're giving them free content that keeps people on their platform. And even if they're just scrolling through, unless they click on yours, it's not considered a viewer unless they actually click to open up your thing.
One of the things that I realize is that when you're doing something and you don't have any history doing it, you don't have anything to compare it to. You only have other platforms.
Right.
So when somebody asks me, so I'll be listening to a phone call or something and says like, well, Jim, what do you think? And I was like, well, what do we have to match this up to? Like, what have we done? What has the artist done? Or who has done something that we have something to hold up, like one test to another test or one set of like data set to the other, because we don't have anything to match it up to or compare it to.
Yeah, you're throwing darts at the wall.
We're just guessing. Reason. And so having a track record, or at least some sort of like way to measure things versus because there's a ton of hustlers and people in this town, or I wouldn't say hustlers, but more like you're selling things that don't work.
Yeah.
And after a while, like
or it worked 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And here's my proof. It worked for so and so 3 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, but
and you're still dealing with that antiquated thing. And one of the frustrating things for me sometimes, Vinny, is that musicians in Nashville in particular, like, they want to meet face to face, which is a horrible way to build a business in some regards. It's like we were joking earlier today about how many coffees I went to when I first moved here 5 years ago. And I was like, man, I'm never going to make any money spending all this money on coffees and lunches.
Especially now the price of coffee now.
Dude, through the roof.
It was $6 and something the other day for a drink that was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was $4 or whatever it was. But I always laugh about people because they're like, well, I'd love to meet for lunch or meet for coffee or whatever. And I'm like, when are you working? I also, when I'm coaching somebody, I ask them things like, hey, do you have scheduled time for songwriting? And they're like, no, I just, I get these ideas and I sit down and write. I'm like, someday if you ever have a publishing deal, I'm like, that's going to burn you because you're going to need to be able to sit down and punch out songs.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to have discipline and you have to have habits. Like, it's just part of the whole deal. I hate to break everybody's bubble with like, I'm just creative, or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, it's a lot of work. Like you were talking earlier in another show about all the things you're trying to, you're introducing your wife, you're helping your wife introduce her. You got to write a song, you got to play a gig, you got to go speak at a thing.
Yeah.
I think some of the best musicians are actually ones that aren't actually just musicians.
Yeah.
They've figured out ways to build.
Well, I mean, you're talking about me, of course.
Right. Yeah. You build out, revenue streams within your own business. And, rather than just like, well, I'm only going to do this because this worked. It's like, well, you can't actually prove that. I think that, rather than me go work, 10 jobs, I was like, well, what can I build within Gray Artist Services or whatever else I'm doing? What can I build within that organization that could be another revenue stream? Or what partnership could I go out and build? Like, and there's some days where I'm like, man, if I just talked to X amount of more people or did some more prospecting and those became leads, which is, like a marketing funnel, sales funnel, like what would those results be?
The more hands you shake, the more money you make.
It's a Brad Lee thing right there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Old Bradley Lee.
Boom.
Dropping bombs. No, but I mean, I think that's all great points, man. I am a better songwriter whenever I can consistently schedule time to sit down and write songs. With my current schedule, with all the different things I have going, I don't sit down and do that. Yeah. And there are times when I get inspired, like, my next single's coming out. It's going to be called Walmart Drip. Bam. But,
which he is representing today.
Come on.
Look at that Walmart Drip, everybody. Look at that.
Look at those nipples.
Stand up for him. Stand up for him. Thank you, everybody. Look at the Walmart Drip.
Come on. Take it. Anyway. I think it's all valid points, man. And it's cool that, you're always going to have to be changing. You're always going to have to be learning what's next. The dangerous thing that can be with trying to create another stream of revenue in your business or especially as an artist, is you're also giving yourself a whole nother job.
That's right.
And it's cool. It's like, okay, well, that one's making money. This one, and sometimes you have to take something out and say, hey, look, and that one don't make me no money, But, obviously you want to keep the things that make you happy and all that kind of stuff. But
You mean like a podcast?
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
Well, and there has to be something. There has to be something bigger driving you.
yeah.
We were.
You crazy ass.
I know, but something bigger that drives you behind it all, because if you're just focusing on work and just focusing on business development, like that, you're going to run out of fumes after a while.
Yeah.
And for years I was good at a lot of things that I did, but I ran on fumes. I didn't run, and I was just like, I wasn't talking to anybody about how do I grow as a young guy, as a young professional, how do I grow as a father, how do I grow as a Christian, how do I grow, how do I stay in shape?
Yeah.
I just like pushed myself, because I was workaholic.
Yeah, I have to be. That's a slippery slope for me, because I can go into this mode where I shut off everything else around me and I just focus on the work at hand. And that's been a great asset to me in my life, but it's also hurt me in my life. If I haven't done that now, but if I was to do that now with my kids and my wife, you miss, and you are going to regret that. Yeah. You mess up a relationship with a girlfriend when you're younger or whatever, not that big of a deal. You might look back and say, oh, I wonder what would have been like, But when you find that person, you're like, no, this is my future. This is the person I'm going to be with. When you have those kids and you realize, and thank God I saw it, because I see myself, because I had a great opportunity come to me to do some great things in music, potential TV shows and things like that. And it would make me miss a lot of these, early things that happened,
It's the difference between rich people and wealthy people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rich people in this world with a lot of regret.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at it, I'm like, man, they're only going to be little for a little while, And my son, today was his last day of kindergarten, and I'm sitting there looking at him now. I can look back and I can truly say, like, man, I've spent a lot of great time with him. It may be just snuggled up in the chair watching a movie, or it may be, me sitting there playing in the floor with him, playing,
Yeah.
He loves superheroes and stuff. Not as much now, he still loves them, but now he doesn't be like, Dad, come play superheroes on the floor with me, But now he still puts on his Superman cape or his Spider-Man outfit and wants to, show me this new move that he's got or whatever. And you just give them that time and that attention. And that means more to them than any dollar amount you could ever spend. And it doesn't mean that they don't like to get things. Trust me, my son all the time is like, Dad, we should get a new costume, or we should get this, or we should go somewhere. They all want to do that. They're kids. That's just the nature of it. But you taking the time with them is more important. So, glad that I noticed that early, because I do know a lot of artists out there that like, man, I don't even remember my kids growing up.
Yeah, I was working a lot when they were younger, but there was times when I was home a lot.
Yeah.
And I made it a priority to be at a lot of things. And then as they got into like junior high and high school, I'm really tight with my youngest son because I was around a lot. And then, there was a time when they were all in high school where I was home more because I was working from home and I owned my own business and things like that, or I was freelancing. And so I had that advantage of like, my daughter texted me the other night. She was at a Need to Breathe show.
Oh, yeah.
With another band out of state. And she texted me a clip from the show because and she goes, remember, she goes, we used to listen to this song, this particular record, on the way back and forth to my soccer practices, like every week, almost every day. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, we got to listen to this again. But like that, music was such a huge part of our life.
Absolutely.
Not only
Which one was it?
It was, man, I can see the cover.
I've got a Need to Breathe song as well that I've listened
Yeah.
to. I'm no telling how many thousands of times.
It was the one that would have been like 2012 or 11 or 10 or 11 or 12. And I can almost hear the song in the back of my brain. But that one time, it's like a dog that you train to do a
Hey,
trick.
brother,
I was gonna say, brother is mine.
Yeah.
you discovered.
That's the one for me right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it was. But I'll figure it out. Figure it out here at some point.
No,
But,
my shoulder boulders are growing. I just about took
Yeah,
the
baby,
TV
don't
off
take the
wall. Did
TV
you
off
see
the
that?
wall.
But and
Are they still in full tact?
I think the lead singer
Lead
lives
singer
here.
bounced, right?
That song.
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
it's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were great. My wife used to teach. See, it's funny how music becomes really a hit to you, or something in your life because you create memories with it.
Yeah.
And my wife used to teach body pump, and there was a couple of Need to Breathe songs that were in the body pump tracks that she would, and that's how I learned about Need to Breathe. And I was like, man, these guys are freaking awesome. That guy's such a great singer, and I think they were somewhat Christian based for the most part, right?
That's right.
Kind of like Creed was at one point.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were just, the music was great, but we created those memories with it. That's the thing I love about music so much is think about how boring movies would be if they didn't have somebody back there playing music. Whether it's the soundtrack type music where it's actual songs they put in, like you see on, kind of a more, up-tempo, fun movie or action movie, or if it's more like the, drama, like a Rocky, of course that had some great songs in it too, but when you listen to that, symphony behind them and the orchestra playing and all that, and it's like, if he was running up those stairs in Philadelphia to get to the top and it wasn't playing, if it wasn't playing that, you'd be like, okay, cool, he ran to the top of the stairs.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Music is is like this bridge between so many things. And I was listening to a record by T-Bone Burnett, who I didn't really know a lot about until like past couple of years or whatever. And somebody's, I don't know, recently said like he played a show at the Ryman, and I went and looked up his latest record, and I was out for a walk and I listened to it and I was like, wow, this is really good. And I don't have probably much like you guys. It's like I don't always have time to sit and listen to a whole complete record, right? Yeah. I'm listening to a playlist, and it's a mix of things, and you're like, curse you! You don't listen to my whole record, man. We can't be friends anymore. But I have people, clients that are sending me music, and I've got to go listen to that, and then and then I've got to like listen to things that I'm marketing or whatnot. And I'm a huge fan of music, but it's a little bit different when you're working in it all the time. But managing, living life, there's a lot more to life than work.
Yeah. Got to make sure you don't just make a living, you make a life,
Yeah. And, made, going to church is a big priority. But I was like, well, going to church on Sunday is a priority, but that's not the actual priority. The priority is faith.
Yeah.
Right. The priority is the relationship with God. And then it's also has to be a priority of growth, because if you're not growing in your faith, it's like I do a devotional every day. But then if I'm not like figuring out how does that apply and how do I actually grow and change?
Yeah. You just read a bunch of words on a book that morning and said, okay, that made me feel good for 5 minutes.
I journaled and I did my thing and I crossed that off my list.
Yeah, and I think, everybody's different, obviously. Like me, like he was saying, in the sauna is kind of when he does that. When me, it's when on the recumbent bike. But even like with business stuff, never in a million years would I thought I'd been the guy that was in there lifting weights to an ebook, to a Green Light by Matthew McConaughey.
It's a
great book, and I'm got dyslexia pretty bad, so when I read to comprehend anything, I'm just like I can read it fast, and then I have no clue what I just read.
Yeah.
So for me, listening is where I really sinks in. But there was another one called The Go-Giver, that I listened to. Great book. Yeah. I got, of course, The Art of the Deal, and listened to it. I never in a million years thought I would be the guy, because I was always like, put on some music, let's rock it, Dude, that's anytime you see me in the gym, if you come, what are you listening to? It's either going to be a motivational speaker of some sort, a book, or every now and then I will still put on like, I'll go to what's it called, New from Nashville playlist, and I'll listen to new artists and people that are coming, because I'm like, okay, well, let's see which one of my buddies are getting some love, or if there's new artists I hadn't heard of yet. And it's amazing every week. I'm like, I've never heard of any of these people, and I literally am in downtown Nashville all the time. And it never fails. I'll end up meeting the artist like 2 weeks later. And so I've come to the conclusion it's probably like I probably met them but didn't know, who they were. And so kind of said hi or shook their hand or heard them on a writer's round. And you hear so many phenomenal people that it doesn't matter. Like, last night, when this showcase, our buddy Will Terry, went up there and crushed it last night. And, oh, look at that. There's a timer. It says 52 minutes. That means we got 8 minutes and a half to keep talking, or 7.5. Anyway.
We're never going to end tonight, Vinny. We're going to go like your 70-minute stretch.
I'm cool with that. That doesn't bother me at all. I've done over 90 minutes before. Straight. I could get on here and talk by myself for 90 minutes.
The first podcast we ever did was 4 hours long.
Was it really?
It was.
Bam. Anyway, it was a couple different episodes. So don't hit mute. He just muted me, guys. No.
I got a question
for
you. You said the ebooks in the gym or the audiobooks in the gym.
Audiobooks, yeah.
I was that guy too. But I found that every time I would hear like that golden nugget, it would ruin my workout because I would stop everything I'm doing
to write it down.
Notes.
I did the same thing, yeah.
And to send it to somebody.
Yeah.
And then 30 seconds later, it's another nugget. And you're like, shit. And you're writing that one down. So what are you doing there? So
I've done that.
Same thing?
I'm not struggling with it. I don't send it to anybody. Now afterwards I've sent stuff, but no, I if I hear something, I'm like, dude, I love that. I will definitely go in and type it out into my notes or something like that. I've done that a bunch. With green light, if you did that, you'd be doing it every other second.
It's great.
And the good thing is he says green light every time it's something that made him positive, and he says red light whenever it's like I need to stop doing
bumper
that.
Sticker.
Yeah, bumper sticker. Yeah. Right. He just, it was a great book. So I've definitely struggled with that and had that. Even when I'm listening to motivational speakers, I'm like, dude, that was great. I'm going to put that in and, put it as an affirmation, and say this to myself, Never, I didn't think I'd ever be that guy that would want to. I didn't take notes in school. In school, he'd be like, take notes. I'm like, I don't take no notes.
Who does that?
As long as I make a D or better, I don't care, And honestly, that wasn't a mindset of like that I didn't think I could do better. It's just like, if all I got to do to pass is this, I can put all my extra energy into going and working and being better at football and learning how to play this guitar and all this other stuff, So as long as I could keep that, and I did better than a D, but it just wasn't my priority. It wasn't some people that if they got below an A, my buddy James Chizikowski, if he made below an A, which rarely ever happened, he was mad at himself. I was sitting there with a C+. I'm like, yeah, heck yeah, bro.
Man,
passed.
I was not a great student in high school, or in college for that matter.
Yeah.
I didn't even finish college, but
what's that?
Right?
Yeah, same.
College. I did enough in high school to get
hard
by.
knocks.
Well, when I loved something, you could tell because when I really liked what I was studying, I would dig into it.
Right, same.
Right, and like absorb it, like something about history that I really loved, or maybe even English or whatever. I loved writing. And it's funny because there's things I had to memorize as a high school senior that I still remember.
Today. Yep.
Like it's still in my memory. And, but I found that, I loved things like writing. I loved reading as a kid. Man, I read tons of books. I still do. I still love, and when I have time, I love to read books.
Yeah.
Puts me to sleep.
Yeah.
Immediately.
That
was the hardest thing for me on the Hard 75 was reading that 10 pages. I tried to do it in this book. My wife's like, this is a good one. I started reading and I'm like, this is a book about how to be a better network marketer. And I was like, it was the guy that did Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, man, it's going to be great. It's Robert Kiyosaki. And I started reading. I'm like, I was like, next thing I wake up, I was like, oh, crap, I got to read 3 more pages or I'm going to miss my thing. But I started doing it with the Bible. I started saying, hey, that's going to be my time that, I'm going to read 10 pages a night of the Bible, Get bigger writing if you're going to read the Bible. If you get one of those one that has the pages, you open it up and it's like barely you can see, you got to have a mic. Those take you forever to read 10 pages, okay?
And the Bible is hard to read.
It is.
So
yeah.
it for real puts me to sleep.
Well, I kind of focused on, I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on the book of Job or whatever, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, whatever. I was going to focus on a certain thing. And it was good, but it more felt like I was, instead of reading it to fill my spirit, I was reading it to just get through the 10 pages.
Yeah.
So I somewhere during the pandemic, well, first of all, I had a mentor that I met with from my church who had been like mentoring and discipling men and military chaplains for 30 years or something like that. And he was a really good dude. He had like perfect cursive handwriting. And he said, well, if you want to meet with me, one of my requirements is that you need to bring a journal, and you need to journal through some portion of scripture every week, every day. And then when we meet every week, we'll talk about what we journaled about. And I was like, cool. And I said, so how long have you been doing this? And he goes, well, I've been journaling through the scripture for about 35, almost 40 years. And so he brought in some of his like stacks of journals
Wow.
that he had journaled through, and he had, mentored other men through this process. And then I started doing that, and then I did it for like a year or so, and then I stopped. And then during the pandemic, I got a journal, and actually I just got a yellow legal notepad like that one that a lawyer would use. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to work my way through this notepad, and I'm going to see what happens. And so I just started journaling through scripture. And then I remember I was asking people how I could pray for them. And I remember a gal said, an artist that I knew, she said something like, I'm really trying to learn like what God's promises are for me, like, or what are God's promises in scripture. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder what God says about if I go and I Google the word Bible promises, and then started pulling up all these lists of Bible promises. I was like, I don't know those verses. I actually don't know, because I hear people talk all the time like, well, the Bible, God promises this or that. And I was like, I'm not familiar with those things. Yeah. And I was like, how do I get to know that? And so I made a list of like 31 Bible verses, and I just put those into my calendar every day. And they were all numbered by the like, it was the 5th or whatever. Like today is the 24th. So the verse for today is, because I go into my little reminder here in my calendar, and the 24th is God promises good things, James 1:17, and that's what I journaled about today. Yeah. And I use SOAP, so I use scripture, observation, application, prayer. And there are days I definitely miss it, because I'm like trying to wake up and do some work and run to a meeting like everybody else. But for the most part, for about 3 or 4 years now, I've journaled through those 31 Bible promises every day. And the first time I did it for like 9, I was just like, can I do it for 90 days? And then next thing you know, it was like 6 months later. Next thing you know, it was a year later. And the next thing you know, it was like, and then I was like, well, I need to learn how to trust, I struggle in trusting people and trusting God. So I got a whole list of verses about trusting God. And then I started journaling about gratitude and all these different things. But those habits, like they became, they build something where, and there's like days, it's almost kind of like a mind trick, because there's days, I know like on the 28th of every month, it's Isaiah 43:19, which it's God speaking through the prophet Isaiah, and he's saying, can you not see, can you not perceive what I'm doing? Or have you not been watching? And I'm about to put rivers out in the dry places, and I'm about to put roads out in the hard to reach places. And it's about God talking to the Israelites during the exile. And I know that on the 28th of every month that verse is going to pop up. I know that right around the next couple of days, it's going to be Isaiah 40:31, which is like, everybody grows weary, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. I know that like certain days of the month, there's those verses.
That's the 28th.
The 28th is Isaiah 43:19, and somewhere in the next couple of days is Isaiah 40:31. That's in those list of those verses.
What is the one with Isaiah?
Isaiah, the eagle one is Isaiah 40:31, and the other one about perceiving what God is doing, that's Isaiah 43:19.
No, I'm saying, which one is on the 28th?
That's Isaiah 43:19.
The rise of on wings of eagles.
Oh no, that's the perceiving one. And that the reason is because it seems like the 28th of every month is like one of the hardest days, the end of the month.
June 28th is my birthday, is why I was asking.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Do you journal?
I don't journal a whole lot. It's not something that's ever really pushed me. I've gotten a lot better at taking notes when I've been going to these events and stuff and speaking. I write songs. I think for me, which would be my version of journaling, there's so many things that I have that are like these half-written songs because it's my feelings for the day, or it's my, the other day I started this song. It was called "I'm Jealous of My Kids." And the whole point of the song was like, I'm scared to death when he's about to jump from the 5th step of the stairs, but I'm also jealous because I know when he lands, he's going to jump right up and take off running, So in my sense, that's my version of journaling, Like I love the fact that, we took him to this birthday party a couple weeks ago, and for literally an hour straight, he jumped on trampolines and ran back up the stairs. And I'm like, man, I'm jealous of that. I remember I used to go do that, And I don't think, but nobody I know, it doesn't matter if they're in the greatest shape of anybody that I met. When you're 40 and, you can't do it. When you're 30, you can't do it. The energy that a kid has and the love for life and the simplicity, like taking a dirty old, slide towel, I guess you'd call it, up to the top of this little slide and sliding down and landing on a little pad was the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas us, we'd have fun doing it 2 or 3 times and then we're done. We're like, okay, well,
those things were hot.
Yeah.
Those metal ones, they would burn your rear end,
these are inside the jump zones or sky zone. They don't get hot like what we
those
had.
ones that have been out at the county fair.
the ones that were silver, you got on just your skin just melted off as it's like a napalm slide, But no, I just thought, how cool is that? And it's like, you wish that you had that energy, but you love him because you're just like, man, I'm just so happy because he's so happy with something so simple, jumping on a trampoline, but he's laughing his butt off, but he's also out there just doing it there's no thought of injury. There's no thought of, am I going to be too tired? Is my legs going to be sore? What do I got coming up tomorrow? The innocence of a child is such a beautiful thing. And I think we take it for granted. And some of us grew up in different lives. I didn't get a whole lot of time being an innocent child. So I think part of me is like, as much as I love it, I'm the one providing that life for him and making sure he has that worry-free, like, he ain't worried tonight. He knows I ain't going to come home. No matter what he does wrong, I ain't going to come home and take him upstairs and beat his little ass. You know what I mean? If he did something wrong, if he said something he shouldn't have said or did something, I want to sit down and I'm going to talk to him. Like, hey, bud, tell me what's on your mind. What's going on? Not that I won't spank him if he deserves it, but in his entire life, he might have gotten 10 spankings, maybe. And I always, if you set my son down and you could take me out of the room and you could sit down and say, your dad ever give you a spanking? Yeah. What does he spank you with? His hand. Where's he spank you at? On my butt. That's the only way it's ever happened. I ain't never spanked him out of anger. I ain't never, snatched him up and started whooping his legs and his butt or any of that kind of stuff. I've always sit him down on my lap and said, hey, listen, I'm giving you this spanking to let you know that you can't run out into the middle of the parking lot and run away from me. So that's why you're getting this spanking. And
so your kid did that too?
Oh, yeah. I'm like, he's like, and, he's 3 years old, so he's trying to understand, and I mean, like I said, when I say a spanking, you're swatting them on the butt, and it makes them feel, it just makes them feel like bad that they let you down.
They know they've disappointed you.
Yeah, they disappointed you. And I don't ever want my kids to be afraid of me, Now, inevitably, when they think they're going to get a spanking, they're going to run, or they're going to try and, do whatever. But it just hasn't had to happen that much for Jagger. Now, Harley is a different story. Now, I still sit her down and try to talk to her. She won't let me sit down and talk to her. I mean, she'll punch me in the face. You see these scratches? That's from my baby girl. Right there. Look at that, people. That's from my baby girl, where she literally hit her mom because her mom told her no, she couldn't have a popsicle. So she walks up and just starts hitting, And I'm like, Harley, you cannot hit your mom. And then she come over and start hitting me. I said, well, time for a spanking now. So I said, I'm like, well, listen, you can't be hitting mama. You can't be hitting me. And she reaches and she just hits me again. So I'm like, listen, I'm going to give you a spanking if you do it again. She does it again. I said, listen, all right, you're getting a spanking now. And I turn her over and, I'm trying to give her a spanking. And Jagger would just turn over and, he'd hang his head and he'd take his spanking and, he'd cry for a second. Then he'd want to snuggle up with me. I'll give her a spanking and she'll be like, ha, do it again.
That was me as a child.
I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So now I realize with her, I can't do her. Like Jagger understood that. With her, it's like, no, you're not getting the popsicle.
Yeah.
End of discussion. No, which we don't let them have iPads anyways, but I'll tell them, hey, next time we go on a trip, which is so funny because we don't go on that many trips. The only time they ever get to ever have an iPad is if we're like 5 or 6 hours into a road trip. And I'm like, okay, y'all can watch a movie. But I literally have this thing that goes on the back of my seat and they don't touch it. And it looks like it's like a little movie. I mean, it's like a little TV. Because I just feel like when you are doing this all day, your mind gets connected to it. The few times that they've ever got to play on one because they had a friend over that had one or whatever, we'd take it away from them. They go insane.
They do.
They get mad.
Yeah.
So Harley is definitely just different, So being a parent is so much different with the way you raise one kid may not work for the other kid. Personalities are different. Now on the flip side, Harley is the most competitive. Like Jagger, you could be like, let's go out here and do this. And he's like, okay, you take the ball from him. He's like, why'd you take the ball from me? Well, you're supposed to try and take it back. Well, but I don't want to take it if you got it. Whereas Harley, if I took the ball from her, she'd be kicking you in the knee, she'd be fighting you, you know? So I mean, you know, I don't even know what got us to here, but it's interesting. Oh yeah, I was jealous of my kids. I was talking about journaling.
Yeah.
But it is amazing to me how you sit there and you look at them and you're like, man, I wish I had that innocence. I wish I had that much energy, you know, and that I found joy in the most simple little things, you know. I mean, they're out there picking up. I mean, my son has this insect thing that somebody got him where he has this little bubble thing and he can, you know, pick up an insect and put it inside this little tube thing. Dude, he's collected probably 100 cicadas. Now he's going to have to do like 800 million more to even make a dent. But he'll come in, Dad, look at all these cicadas I got. What should I do with them? I'm like, take them back outside.
Well, you know, some of my favorite parts of the day are the early morning with a cup of coffee and the journal, just like, you know, nothing digital, just like a paper and a pen and a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And the world's quiet, and I know that nobody else. There might be people awake, but no one's doing business at that time of day, and or a walk.
Except for me, I'm training somebody.
Yeah, like a good walk is good too, just to help get the body going and get the.
It's great, and people don't realize. Do it when it's just the sun's just coming up, and don't wear your sunglasses. Don't put on sunblock. Go out there and really soak in that time. And what's it called? Your what clock in the morning? Your it's like your timing clock that gets you on.
I know what you're talking about.
I can't think what it's called, but going and walking in the morning as the sun's coming up is huge. I mean, phenomenal for your body. People talk about grounding. You know, I go out and stand in my backyard some, but I feel like I need a better place to ground. Like I want like a nicer, like I want to go stand in Jared's yard, but not where Nemo's pooping because that's a lot. But no, I mean, that's, you know, all that stuff. I mean, I think peace of mind, like that's, I think more than what I'm jealous of the kids more than anything is just like, they don't have any clue that there could be World War III on the brink.
Yeah.
You know, I've said this whenever I worked with this. I used to help with the CDC kids, the mentally challenged kids, whenever I was in high school, and we had a little boy that had a pretty hardcore version of Down syndrome. I don't know exactly what it was called, but it was Downs and something else. So he wasn't like verbal, like he couldn't sit there and have a conversation. Like a lot of people you meet with Down syndrome, you have a great conversation with them. They understand. He couldn't do that. But dude, if you just gave him a basketball and let him sit there, and he would sit at the free throw line and he would take it and he'd throw it like this. And every time he made one, his name was Jeffrey. It was the greatest thing in the world to him. And I was sitting there one day, I was like, man, he ain't got a care in the world except for somebody give him that damn basketball and let him try to make a free throw from sitting down. And it was just this utter joy that he had, and this like, there was no thought of, he knew he was going to eat today. He knew that, you know, he was going to see people and he wanted to hug everybody, you know, and to me, I was like, man, I'm not saying I want to have Down syndrome or go through what he went through, but I'm also looking at like, man, he'll never have a clue that there's bills to pay and mouths to feed and the pressures that the world can put on you. Because it can get to you. Even the strongest men, I think, at some point you feel the pressure of the world weighing on you.
What do you do? So that's a great question. Is like, you know, when you're going through a high stress season, there's a lot going on. I'm sure in your industry, there's seasons where, you know, or even everything you have going on too. There's like, you know, there's a lot going on, and and also the communication. Like I've noticed recently, like people are sending text messages like emails, or they're not using email, they're using text messages.
I'd rather get text messages. I hate email.
People don't open email anymore.
But the amount of communication, the social media, you know, then just like bills. And I don't have...
it's like you're never off.
Yeah, and I don't have, like, I have the blessing now of not having, you know, I have a girlfriend, but it's like I don't have a dog that I own. I don't have a plant. A whole bunch of things.
It's a way better idea. Just go play with other people's dog.
Right. That's what I do. Is I have a housemate that's got a really cool husky, and I've got a.
That's why you get a friend with a boat too.
Right. And or a friend with a truck.
Yeah.
But I don't have all those. You know, it's like for years, it's like I was married with like 3 kids who were like very busy, and I was busy and she was busy and all of that. And now it's like, I'm going to be 55 in a few weeks. And I'm like,
you don't look a day over 54 and a half.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel more like I'm 54, but anyway, the weird thing about being a Gen Xer and aging is that we grew up in this age where I don't think we ever thought that we were going to age.
Yeah.
You know, with the music that came out in the 80s, like U2 and Billy Idol and all this amazing music that came out in the 80s in that time, and then in the 90s and things like that. I think that we thought that, like, first of all, we were never going to mature, right? We were never going to age. There were like certain things were going to happen because we were.
Well, I mean, y'all's music is timeless.
It is, yeah. That's like
I mean, it's still the hot music today.
Yeah.
right. Like some of those bands are like, you know, they're like U2. I would have loved to see U2 at the Sphere, but
That would be cool.
But having that advantage of like, you know, being a Gen X leader and a parent and a empty nester and all those things, it's like it gives you a different perspective. It's not like, well, back when I was your age, you know, but I can remember like not too long ago, you know, remembering what it was like to have little kids at home. And I was like, I remember like sitting there going, how am I ever going to get anything done and when?
Dude, being when you work at home, like even me, like, you know, a lot of my job takes place on making social media posts, which for somebody who's not super tech savvy, didn't make one post to put a picture inside of a picture and make the story make sense and choose the right section of the song and put the right sticker up there and make sure you put the link in. It'd take me 30, 45 minutes of my morning to go and do that, you know? And I feel like, you know, and regardless if it performs or not, I mean, thank God I've never been tied to how many likes I get or comments or any of that, because it doesn't affect me. I just keep making content. Yeah. But it's like, dude, you can feel like you got nothing accomplished in that hour. Whereas, like, you know, whereas if you was at a different job, we're like, okay, here's my goal is to get X, Y, and Z done. And you spend an hour and it's like, okay, well, I put out, you know, when I worked at Sonic Drive-In, I put out 200 burgers in that hour or whatever, you know, it's like, right. So it's just like, there's no knowledge of, did you actually accomplish anything or not? But when the kids are there and you're trying to put all that together and they want you to come, hey, Dad, come see this. Hey, Dad, watch this. You don't want to not watch that. You want to watch. You want to go spend that time with them. But at some point, you toggle between, am I being a bad dad if I go keep watching? Because that would be what they want. Or do I keep doing what's making us the money so that I can afford for them to keep doing what they want to do? You know, so you battle back and forth in that. I think it's a hard place, man. I don't know. It's for me, I'm always been a low stress person. Like, I'm an easygoing. It takes a lot to get me in a bad mood. I don't really get in a bad mood. And, you know, with kids, it's like you want to make sure you're making the right moves. And it almost seems like, of course, you get told on Instagram and, you know, and TikTok every day that you're, no matter what you do, if you choose to do this, you're doing wrong. If you choose to do that, nope, you're still doing wrong. You know, it's kind of like when in the workout world, they're like, yep, don't eat carbs, eat carbs. Don't eat vegetables, eat vegetables. Don't eat meat. If you eat meat, you're going to die. Oh, hey, you should only eat, like you have that same feeling with your kids of like, you shouldn't yell. Okay, well, I'm not going to yell. Okay, but now if you're too easy on them, then they're going to grow up to be little assholes, you know. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, and now you should do it like this. This is the way you should handle it. Yeah, I've tried that; it didn't work, you know. And well, this works better, you know. I'm like, you know what works for me? Whenever I say, "Hey, boy, do what I said," and he does it.
Sometimes, you know, when I was a young parent, I remember I was taking a parenting class, and I remember that particular teacher telling me that. Or that guide or what it was through that course said, you know, one of the best pieces of advice I can give you is not to like share your opinions about somebody else's parenting.
Yeah.
Right? Because that can really like malfunction on you big time. Like that can backfire.
I had a guy just do this the other day to me.
Right, where it's like telling unless like I'm the kind of parent or person where it's like I won't tell you if you ask me, like if one of my sons or my son or one of my two sons or my daughter ask me about what they should do, I'm going to answer with, here's what I would do if I was in that situation. I wouldn't tell them here's what you should do.
Yeah.
And the same thing with parenting. If somebody asked me about parenting advice or, you know, things like that, I'd say, well, here's kind of how I approach that. And here's some like different ways of looking at it, but I would never go look at somebody and go, you know, Jeff,
you're doing that
really
wrong.
Crappy dad. Like yeah. That's horrible because it's like,
because they're probably doing the best they know how to do.
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah. I even like we were talking about the difference in our kids, you know, with me, if my kids are happy and they're laughing and they're having fun, I don't tell them to be quiet. I don't tell them they're getting on my, I would never say they're getting on my nerves, but I just look at them. I'm like, dude, if they're happy and they're having a good time and they're playing and they're being good to each other, even if I'm like, dude, I'm trying to watch this show or I'm trying to get work done or I'm trying to do, like, no matter what it is, I'm like, dude, that's more important than anything you're trying to watch on TV or any kind of video you're trying to make or whatever. Now, on the flip side, like the other day, I had to record this, little thing where I was advertising the Risk-On Festival. And I said before I went outside, I said, hey, I need everybody to be quiet for like 5 minutes because I got to record this thing. And I get my best take. And I'm like, all right, dude. I'm going through it, doing my whole take. And all of a sudden, Dad, I'm like, crap, it was the best take. And I thought, maybe that's the take I need to use, but I had to go inside. I said, hey, look, I need y'all to slow down for just a second or go upstairs so I can get this video done, But if I'm just sitting there and I'm in the room with everybody and I hadn't removed myself or made it known that, hey, I'm going to go do this, I need y'all to be quiet before I go, and they're just having fun, I ain't about to interrupt their good time for that. I just ain't going to do it. I don't want to dull their shine. I don't want to look at my daughter. If she's singing Let It Go to the top of her lungs and she's having a blast, hey, you need to quiet down. I'm trying to get this. I'm not ever going to do that. Because, then she's going to be like, oh, I'm not supposed to sing. I just don't want to damage their psyche like that. I want them to realize that they have a voice, that they can speak up. And I don't ever want them to be afraid to come tell me. Like if something bad happened to them at school, if somebody did something they weren't supposed to do, I want them to feel so safe to come tell me anything. If they, one of the, God forbid, they, grow up and they decide to have a beer at a party or get a little too drunk at a party, I want them to know that they can call me and I'm going to come get them. And don't go drive, and don't get in the car with some idiot that don't. I want them to have so much faith in me that, hey, there's going to be consequences for everything, but the consequences are way better when you come with me and let me take care of you, know. And, hopefully, I mean, like I said, you can prepare all you want. And, I've known people that have been these awesome parents that have done everything to the possible, the great of their ability, and the kid still ends up being a crackhead in the middle of the street somewhere.
Kids will be kids.
And that's
you raise them to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Like at some point, you have to
give them a little.
You have to let them go and trust what God did through you as a parent, good or bad sometimes, because there are no perfect parents. I think the only perfect parent was God. Just like realizing that you did the best you could. And then as they grow up, like, sure, they leave the house and things like that. Like, you guys remember being, and me too, like leaving the house and going out on your own. Like, it was scary then. And then it's double scary when you're like, oh my gosh, is this how this felt when I left home?
Yeah.
And your kids start going off to college and moving out and going out on their own. And you're like, man, this is harder than I thought it would be. 'Cause you work all those years to like raise them. And it should be hard for them, for when they leave, like, because parenting's not easy and it's a lifelong thing. There's days where I think that I'm, and then being an empty nester and being, I've had 5 years of being single in Nashville and not being married. And it's like, what am I supposed to do? And then you're trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
Because I can work.
Yeah, because you put your identity into being a dad. And honestly, you can't not put your identity there when you're a dad.
Yeah.
Like, it has to be the first thing. I know, not too long ago, Jeff was dealing with a pretty crazy thing that was going on. And it's like, for him, I was pissed off.
Yeah.
Because he showed me what was going on. I was like, I will strangle somebody, And I look and, I'm blessed to be an older dad that has younger kids, that has other guys around me that have went through these things already. Because they may not have had somebody they could call, like, hey, what do I do when this happens? But I've got, friends I can call and be like, dude, and they're like, oh yeah, I went through this same thing. It's going to last for 2 months. This is just a phase, this scratching and hitting phase that my daughter's in the middle of. I'm trying to figure it out because it's like, she's a sweet girl. Like, she's very talented. She's very smart. I don't know why that's her choice of how she's handling rejection or handling no right now.
Yeah.
Jagger, if I told him no, he'd be like, okay, Tell her no. What?
Yeah.
I will marry you.
Well, everybody, kids are wired differently and they all have their different temperament.
Yeah.
And then as adults, you see those same things that you saw in them as a child. You see them like on a higher level.
Yeah.
And I think that, the one thing that somebody asked me on a podcast a few months ago, what would I tell, 20-something-year-old Jim? I was like, know yourself really well and know your
limits,
your limits and your temperament, and like, there's a bazillion personality tests you can take, but like take one or two and then study those and read books about them and get. And
I did the Enneagram and all that.
Yeah, the Enneagram and like I know my Enneagram. I know
I'm
a
a
whole
6.
bunch of stuff. You're what?
I'm a 6.
I can see that. I can
Yeah,
see that.
I'm just free spirit and
Yeah.
go with the flow and I got a little bit of 7 in me,
Yeah.
or maybe it's 8, whichever one that I can take charge when I need to.
Yeah,
but,
that would be the 8 for sure.
But I don't like doing that. I'd rather stay in the fun loving bubble.
Yep.
The butter bubble.
The butter bubble.
Yeah.
The butter bubble, that was awesome. But take personality test, personal development, personal growth, just like because a lot of us, we were raised in a workaholic family, like you think that's the answer for everything. And I don't, and I say this carefully, well maybe carefully, but it's like, faith, like you can't actually rely on the Bible as a like for everything in your life, although we tell everybody that you can rely on it if you actually live it out.
Yeah.
The purpose is to live out what the Bible says, not just hold the Bible in high regard. Like, I don't think that's what he meant.
Well, I mean, you even look at Jesus. I mean, he still was a carpenter and a fisherman.
Yeah.
Like he still had other jobs that
Yeah.
he made money on,
Yeah.
that he got paid to do. He had trades and things like that. So, you're never going to take advice from somebody that's walking around with a worse life than you have.
Yeah.
If somebody's coming up to you and now I don't just mean worse life financially, but I mean if you can tell that they ain't happy in their marriage and you can tell they got they could have all the money in the world and have all the bills paid, but they could be a miserable person. You're like, yeah, I probably don't want to take advice from him. I don't want to end up like that guy. You want to take it. You're taking advice from people that you want to look up to, people that you would desire to have the joy that they have, and not saying that finances don't come into that, but I think those are the people you want to look up to, is the people that like, man, they're happy. Like if you can find a person that's happy living in a small home without the best car, but they're paying their bills and they got their kids with them, their kids love them, and you can tell their kids have this great relationship with them. That to me is somebody to look at, like, what are they doing? They got to figure out their stress is low, their family is happy. Like that's the goal for me. I was like, I want stress to be low, family to be happy. I do want my kids, and it's something I'm really going to focus on, especially as my ankle gets better. But I told Jared, like, man, I want to learn a little bit more about carpentry. I want to learn a little bit more about, fixing stuff. I know I can do it. Like I forced myself to change out the shower head the other day because I wanted to put a filter on there. And I had no clue what I was doing. I was like, I have no clue. First time I put it on there, I'm like, damn, it's just spitting out water everywhere. Then I found this little roll of white tape. And I'm like, what's this for? And I was like, oh, yeah, I pulled some of this stuff off whenever I put the other one on. So I go in there and I wrap the things and I seal it back up and I put it on. I was like, dang, no leak. But I want to force myself to do more of that stuff because I think for me, I've always just been like, well, I'll just hire somebody to do that. Or I'll just let somebody else do that. I'm not good at that, so I'm not going to do it. And so that's some of the things I'm forcing myself is like, hey, how do you go in and solve some of these issues yourself? How do you put the pictures straight on the wall and make sure you got the nails at the same level and all that? And then, of course, I know you got to have some tools, I'm learning that real quick. I'm like, dang, I got to go buy some tools,
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think this is all great information, man. I would love to, have a whole episode just with us talking with you about kids and how to be a better dad and the mistakes that you made along the way. And
I made plenty of mistakes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We all do.
And I will tell you right now that like when I was young, I had a bad temper.
I can't even imagine that.
Oh, dude, I had a bad temper, and that came but that was because of my background, how I was raised, and some things that were going on. I stuttered like bad. I had a bad stuttering, whatever you want to call it. And the school that I went to, thank God that the elementary school I went to, they paid for a speech therapist to come out from the county.
Yeah.
And I sat with that lady and talked to her. I don't know how long that was. It was 3 months, 6 months. I don't know, but it was like once a week.
Yeah.
She came to the school.
When you're a kid, time passes way different when you're a
Dude,
kid.
it is. And I really would love, I don't know if that lady's still alive, but I'd love to find her because
Change
without
your life.
her, I wouldn't be who I am today. But because there were a lot of things going on in my life as a kid that I didn't understand, and I was struggling to communicate. But
So your stuttering was caused by childhood trauma. Same,
just by stuff going on.
I went through that. It's so funny. I didn't know that about you. I went through the same thing.
Yep.
I had a bad stutter because I was afraid to talk.
Yeah.
Because I'm afraid I'd say the wrong thing and get the crap beat out of me. So whenever I would say, you know, imagine me talking slow, but I'm like, I don't want to go. And, you know, because you're scared. You're intimidated to talk because you don't know if you might get the backhand or worse. And I got in there with the speech therapist in Hickman County, and I was in, you know, probably second and third grade, and I started doing tongue twisters, and they would encourage, no, do it again, you know. And when I first started off, I'd be like, if two witches were watching watches, which witch would be watching which watch? And by the end of it, I could be like, if two witches were watching watches, which witch would be watching which watch? Whichever witch wanted to watch, whichever watch, which witch wanted to watch.
And bam,
Boom.
No, but it was interesting. It's like, I mean, now I utilize this when I do my auctioneering stuff because I know where to put the emphasis on certain things to make sure that you can do a tongue twister. You can keep talking without, you know, where you can breathe at. There's so many things you learn in that speech class that gives you confidence just when you're speaking. I mean, even speaking now when I'm doing actual speaking engagements, you know, you understand, like, you put an emphasis on a word when you want it to be emphasized. You know, when you're talking to somebody and you're making a point in the stage, you know, and it's a big point, step forward, you know, and don't step back. You know, I learned that just from having more confidence. Like, if you're stepping back while you're delivering the part of your message that's supposed to be really good, people are like, why is he walking backwards? But if you're like, the reason you need this, and you step forward to them, they're like, oh shit, I need it, you know. Anyways, I'm just getting excited, man.
That's great. Yeah, I'd love to come back sometime and talk about all the things. And
You're here every time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
We could always just add a gym episode. A gym-isode. We go to the gym one episode a month, you know, or one episode, whatever. Well, look, man, I appreciate you jumping on here with us. You got, you know, way more stuff to deliver and talk about. I think there's, you know, the cool thing about this individual episode, whether you're a dad, a young artist, an older artist, an independent artist, you know, somebody that's struggling with, you know, your depression and things you've been through, I think there's a little bit in this episode for everybody. And I think we try to keep it like that. But this one in particular, I think the first part of it was kind of, okay, let's get to know Jim a little more. And then the second part of it is like, well, wait a second, we're about to lay some truth on you. So
That's right.
I like it. With that being said, you need to like, subscribe, share, do all this other good stuff. But before that, I messed up. Where can they find you at online?
You can follow me on the Instagrams as @JimGray online, is GRAY, and that's really the best spot is Instagram.
You heard it here first. @JimGray online. That's GRAY, not GREY. That was a different movie. Okay. With that being said, like, share, follow, give us 5 stars. Make sure you give us a little comment in the comment section. Make sure you give us a review. Make sure it's all good, because if it ain't, we know where you live.
Preach.
Preach.
Do it.
Abe Lincoln.
We're no longer black.